Hi, this is my color photography final exam. The artist I chose today is named Rob Hann. He is a road tripping photographer who uses lighting and colors to convey different meanings throughout different settings. And I think it's a really neat concept of road trip photography, as I've never heard of it before, and he goes around taking his own little road trips, but while also finding interesting subjects to take images of and use the colors around him and the lighting around him to really send the message to the viewers that he's trying to convey. When he was 31, he bought his first ever camera, hoping to become a really good photographer. He first started out doing photography for magazine companies. He would do models and then self-portraits and regular portraits, different kinds of stuff for finding out his best style, I guess. After a while of doing photography for those models, however, he knew that the best way for him to step up was to do more personal work, work that meant a lot to him rather than just trying to get a paycheck. So he went on his first American road trip. And the more he took images of that, the more he figured out, this is what I want my people, this is what I want my legacy to be, is the different environments that I take images of. But with his modeling jobs, he noticed that as the internet gained more and more traction, it got harder and harder to find jobs for him. So he started selling his own artwork in New York streets. He was eventually found by Christine Sully, owner of Click Gallery, and she started selling prints of Rob's work. Along with that was also Christian Larson of Larson Warner Gallery in Sweden, which I think is a really neat idea, knowing that you start these images in your own country, and then they find their way worldwide. They become such impactful images that people all around the world want to see them. And I think it's a really neat thing that every artist should be able to go through at some point in their lives. His description, he mostly does more isolated things, more underground type things. Like he finds smaller buildings, bridges, things you don't normally see on a day-to-day basis, and he uses different lighting techniques and different colors to convey his message through his photos. He wants the readers to see that the color and the shading and the lighting can really impact the way the setting is conveyed. I think the main thing that I like about his artwork is when he uses hard lighting versus like contrasting backgrounds, like red on white and then white on blue. I think it's a really neat thing it gives detail to a point where it almost seems like it's painted, but it's a real place that you can see. And I think it's really neat that you can go take your own road trip and find the same spot he took his image, take your own image, and then it be completely different from his own. I think that's the coolest part about road tripping, is that you see the same spot as many other people, but at the same time it's a different feeling for you. This is White Sands, New Mexico. He took this image with a red block against a white sands hill, and the white on top of the blue really contrast each other. It shows you what the main background is versus the middle background, kind of. And then the foreground being the red square that almost immediately catches the viewer's eye, being bright red against the white sands. And it's just a very nice photo, and it's satisfying to see that there's not as many shadows. It's kind of like solid, but you can still see the detail in the dunes. This image is one of the more like different ones from his other works. He does urban exploration, and I think it's a really neat concept to find things that are like forgotten in time and to capture how they are holding up now. This theater, for instance, the chairs, you can tell that they've been worn down, they've been used heavily, but he conveys it in a way where his light still allows shadows to be seen in the image while also showing the dirty seats. and the orange, it just contrasts both the shadows behind him and the chairs. This image is a really neat one. Blythe, California, I believe is how it's pronounced. He made sure when he was taking this image that the red truck was straight in the middle of the image, but it's also neat that the roof of the overall building that the truck is under, he has it more slanted to the left of the image. And I think it adds a really nice detail because the shadow from the building goes straight through the truck. And it gives like a different contrast between the shiny sun and then the more shaded red of the truck. This image also uses a lot of neutral colors. There's not a lot of bright pop-out colors. Maybe like the background has some green trees, there's a blue trash can, but the main focus is the red truck and the neutral colored building. This photo was I'm assuming it was like an old gas station that he found and took a picture of. But the way he took the picture, it's kind of like an advertisement photo. It's what it really reminds me of. Like, it's advertising. We have food, we have cocktails, we have a pool. But it's also kind of vintage and retro in a way because the bright letters are still kind of distressed and worn down against the parchment-colored sign behind it and the rust building up on the metal. It's a really good contrast between modern advertisement and vintage-style buildings and signs and stuff like that. This image is probably my most favorite image, as it's more closely resembled to the style that I go for when it comes to just like not necessarily party images, but you have a disposable camera to take pictures on what you think is the best. I really like the way how most artists, they would make sure that the neon lights could be clearly seen, but Rob made sure he can see a bit of a blur in his image, to where it's not like fully perfect. I feel like it's a nice detail because it gives like a more rustic vintage look, along with the way the building follows the rule of shadows I mentioned earlier. It has a green contrast background, but then the shadow of the building cuts it off, and then it changes to a more red, purplish background because of the lighting from the signs. And it's a really nice contrast because you see the bright green and then the red, and then the building is what really catches your eye with the neon lights and then the sign above it. But all in all, I think Rob Hann is a really interesting photographer, and I'm really glad I chose him as my main subject for this project, because just learning about the concept of road trip photography is really interesting, and I'd love to try it out one day. But I'm definitely going to be taking a lot of inspiration from some of his more freelance vintage photos, as I feel like they make it seem more like you're along with the adventure rather than he's just showing you an image he took while on a trip. But that is my entry for the photography final exam. I hope you enjoyed this slideshow and this presentation, and have a good rest of your evening.